Hey everyone, welcome back to Data and Donuts. My name's Aaron. I'm here today with my friend CJ Bishop. Today we're going to talk about geospatial analytics. But before we get into that, I'd like CJ to tell me a little bit about himself.
Hey everyone, my name is CJ Bishop. I work for Coast Community College District. I'm a senior research analyst there. Worked in higher ed for I think a little over 20 years now. Everything from student life to registrar, institutional research, private, public, in-person, online, all that fun stuff. And as of late, I have started to look at more mapping and how we can use mapping data to really help us in what we do in serving our students and the powers that be.
That's awesome. And just knowing a little bit about your background, so you take some classes and have experience, even giving a presentation at a huge conference on this topic. What is geospatial analysis or analytics?
Well, simply, let's put it this way, stuff happens, and specifically it happens somewhere. So geography is the science of where. So that's concerned about human and physical geography. And specifically, the human geography is concerned with the understanding of the dynamics of culture, societies, economics, those kind of facets. Physical geography is concerned with the understanding of the dynamics of landscape and environment. So geography uses the understanding of social and physical processes and patterns to base different concepts of place. And this is all based off of the Royal Geographic Society. Now, when we talk about stuff that happens, we can talk about things like fires, cell phone tower locations, or college students. So in addition, when we think about things spatially, we also consider the space and time of those events or items. So we can look forward or we can look backward, and applying space, we can consider changes over time and what patterns exist. So thinking spatially, this allows us to gain more information, insight into what happened, when it happened, why it happened, and how it happened. So getting to your question, so geographic information systems help us track and compile all the stuff in the world. So if we have questions like, how have student enrollments across the state changed over the past 5 decades, we can see enrollment patterns and potential human migration patterns as well. Geospatial analysis is the gathering and display and manipulation of images using items like GPS, satellite photography, and historical data, and describes explicitly in terms of geographic coordinates or implicitly in terms of items like street address, postal code, or forest stand identifier to identify and apply different geographic models. The geospatial analysis filters out relevant and irrelevant data and allows us to apply, conceptualize, and visualize the order hidden with the apparent disorder of geographically sorted data. So doing so, this allows us to provide like accurate trend analysis, modeling, and predictions. However, when doing this stuff, we also have to be very vigilant to avoid any kind of spatial fallacies or biases of misunderstanding effects and causal relationships, stuff we have to normally do with any type of general research. And the geospatial analysis is sometimes considered both it encompasses something that's intuitive as much as it is a science. So it's a little bit of an art and science involved in the process, but in a nutshell, that's kind of what it is.
That's really cool. And you think about that all the time, how the data is collected, how it's being utilized, and how we can leverage that. And when thinking kind of down that vein, how do you plan to use it at your district?
We've used it in a few different ways. And really what I found the greatest benefit of using geospatial information is engaging with others in a thoughtful dialogue that helps us to better understand like researchers and leaders and where they could better understand the data used in this kind of format. When using these kind of things, we want to make sure the data is geospatially informed and really helps provide additional insight. Sometimes the term is, we don't want to provide, analysis paralysis or data paralysis. So it's really getting an understanding of what people want and having a better understanding of how geospatial information can help with that. We've at the district had a couple of great dialogues and have applied it in a few different ways, both short-term and long-term. Some of our one-off projects included examining the impact of COVID enrollments and analyzing impacts of communities that we've served. We looked at different students those who applied but didn't enroll, those who enrolled first time, and those who continued as students during COVID, and saw maybe where the impact was based on location. We used also other layers such as census tracts that allow us to look at health data. So allowed us to get a little more insight on community needs, specifically socioeconomic, health perspective, and there's a lot of public-facing resources out there, and colleges are doing a lot. So it allows us to look at communities that may have been impacted more and helped us better reach out and understand those communities and basically reach out and help them. It also, with the enrollment challenges, it allows us to look at areas of growth. So maybe where there's high enrollment trends based on population growth, to look at opportunities for outreach. In a more finite way, we've looked at career and technical education. I've used efforts to look at census tract trends to identify areas for support or marketing. The Strong Workforce Program Talent Ed, we're using a geospatial LMI employer-driven labor market informed map. Basically, it's helping both students and employers to engage in a way based on skill sets and programs on a geographic format, which has been helpful. We've done some fun projects where I've used it to inform different grants to show the greatest impact or need. Let's see, career and college and career access pathways. We've used that to look at regional labor market projects. I collaborated with practitioners in the field, one at UCLA and others like nonprofits like at Advance OC, and we provided outreach for different methodologies and provided some programming online and taught at some conferences. And then big picture, we're trying to apply this into dashboards and a hub site to allow us to look at and allow others to use the material.
That's really cool. It's really awesome, actually. And so say if someone else listens to this is like, oh my gosh, this is super exciting. I'd love to do this. What considerations would they have or recommendations you may give if someone's considering utilizing geospatial analysis?
Of course. I would say it's learning how to ask insightful geographic questions. Basically, this provides insight to the user and the researcher as well. One practice that we've applied is framing geospatial analysis by using geospatial characteristics and mapping them to questions that others may want to look at to analyze. So an example of this would be a geospatial characteristic would be what zip codes have lower levels of educational attainment by key demographics. And the analysis would be, where should we target future enrollment outreach, or where do we allocate staff and resources? Another two examples would be a characteristic of which census tracts have higher or lower numbers of students associated within our programs. And we may ask ourselves, well, are we seeing community change? How can we predict student interests and needs? And then what communities have lower access to resources like broadband or computers, or may have food insecurity? And then we may want to ask and analyze the question, what factors such as poverty income or SNAP benefits can we identify by geography to help areas of outreach and partnership? So those questions are big. Additionally, I would say use some thoughtful consideration on how to source your data. Again, we're all researchers and we've got limited time. So I would say ask those big questions that you traditionally do ask yourself looking at data. So what exactly is the purpose of this data? And more specifically, is there a purpose for the needed data? Is there a more efficient way for me to search for this data online? Sometimes we may have a lack of data that forces us to create something original, but the reality is we may need to start looking and developing our own. This also gives us the process of how we can analyze what data we already know exists out there. So familiarizing source with public sources, and then also consider the format of the data, especially with geospatial things. You got to understand different formats and be able to consider ways in which you can search for that data and have common forms that work within geographic information systems. Commonly, shapefiles are a big one. A few other things I would consider are answering these questions, obviously to help with the efficiency of that, but familiarizing yourself with open or public data sources like the US Census Bureau or American Fact Finder. Exploring data based on map anatomy can help you get a better example of what maps to use or how to utilize maps. Some common mapping features, you can look at like cartography is a big one. And then you can look at things like a reference map, and those show location of geographic objects of interest, or thematic map, and that shows how one geographic aspect can be distributed across space. And then also a dynamic map, which is a lot of what we do, which is where you can do changeable resources or questions that require interactions. This allows it for yourself to be more familiar, and it gets the users a little bit more involved. I can go on with some of the weeds, but I'm going to also name off some big things that you should probably just be aware of resources that are out there from different colleges and community resources. An organization that's good to familiarize yourself was Esri, ESRI. That's a big one that puts out a lot of white papers and provides examples. Other organizations are like the Urban and Regional Information System Association, as well as the Global Data Infrastructure Association. And there's also a higher ed one called Geotech, GOTECH. And then as far as some open resources, I'd recommend you don't necessarily need to buy the software. You can, especially if you have funding, but there's GIS software such as QGIS, OSSIM, GRASS, GRASS, Map Server, and PostGIS. These are all open source forms and kind of familiarize yourself with that. Other open content I recommend using beyond the census is Geospatial Data Abstract Library, as well as Geometry Engine or open source, Map, Nick, and then also Feature Data Objects. These are all kind of combined. I'm sure provide a link for you all. And then lastly, look at some of your local stuff, especially if you're doing focused regionally. We're out of Orange County, so Advanced OC is a great public source that allows you to look at a lot of public data and how that's been utilized. City of Irvine is doing some really cool stuff. Southern California Association of Governors has some good examples. And within community colleges, Monroe Community College is a great one, as is Harrisburg Area Community College. I would just look around. And of course, if you have a geography department, look at them. I'm sure they love to talk with you and love to get some of the knowledge that you have. And like everything else, it's important to know your audience, so talk to them about it and avoid personally identifiable information. So that would be the big ones I'd recommend.
Excellent. No, thank you so much. I think that's a wealth of knowledge. And like I said, we may have to come back and have you give a demonstration or something. That's fantastic. Excellent. So my final bonus question is, what do you prefer more, tea or coffee? And which kind?
Coffee all the way. Like a medium roast, give me some of that caffeine. And then I don't know, we've got my wife's got me trying some matcha stuff too, so some matcha coffee as well. So I feel like there's anything that can get me caffeinated, I'm all about it.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, cool. Thank you so much, CJ, for hanging out today, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Of course.